Hey there, my name is Adam from the team here at Parabola, and in this quick video, I'll be sharing a bit about how other supply chain and operations teams are using Parabola to automate a lot of the manual, repetitive tasks involved in processes like production and demand planning using Parabola. To kick things off, helpful to think about what are the main challenges in production planning that Parabola can help solve. And now, first and foremost, production planning requires a really comprehensive snapshot of existing inventories across the different 3PLs and warehouses that you're working with. And now, oftentimes, this involves pulling data from a variety of WMSs and maybe some internal tools and getting that all into one unified format to understand how these on hand inventory levels are affected by sales in different regions of the country, so on and so forth. Second of all, it requires consistent methods for forecasting sales volumes. And we often see different teams, different locations using different formulas for forecasting sales volume. And using Parabola, we're able to take a lot of that lack of standardization and build really robust processes that can be duplicated across locations and teams to make sure that everyone's coming to the same values using the same methods. Finally, we also need to think about how do we proactively communicate these needs with manufacturers and 3PLs before it's actually too late and you've ran out of inventory and you're unable to fulfill orders. And so in this flow, we'll share a little bit about how we're able to accomplish those three things. This parabola flow is comprised of three different types of steps that help us automate all of the manual repetitive steps involved in manually calculating weeks on hand, for instance, and getting a comprehensive overview of inventory levels. We have steps to pull data in. And so in this case, we're pulling from Shopify and an email attachment. But if we needed to pull that data instead from a WMS or your ERP system or other APIs, we certainly could do that as well. The second type of step that we're working with are data transformation steps. So think about things like data aggregations, filtering, selecting columns, any kind of manipulation you would manually make in Excel, we'll be able to mimic that same behavior in Parabola. And then finally, we have steps to send data to whatever destination it needs to go to. So whether that is a Google Sheet or you need to email a manufacturer a CSV file, wherever that data needs to go, we can build that really custom workflow without involving resources from your engineering team to make sure that the proper people are being notified about the correct data sets. In this flow here, we are starting by forecasting sales over each of the next 12 months using the last 30 days of sales as a vector for this calculation. So in this case, this is some test data here, but imagine we're pulling the last 30 days of sales from Shopify or whatever sales channels you're working with. From there, we can start to do some aggregation. So for instance, sum up the quantity sold based on each SKU and product name. And then we can start to do things like set an expected month over month growth rate. In this case, we're expecting sales to grow by 30%. And then we can calculate in the next 30, 60, 90, so on and so forth days, what is the expected sales volume to help us start getting a full picture around our replenishment needs over those same cycles. On the flip side here, we're also pulling in on-hand inventory. And so in this case, we're receiving a CSV file from our 3PL over email. We can pull that right in, select some columns, do some filtering, and eventually we have a nice cut down list here that we can then combine with our sales data using this combined table step, which is much like a VLOOKUP or a merge in SQL. From there, we can do some formatting. We can figure out when existing inventory drops below those needs that we're projecting a couple months out. And eventually we can send this off to a Google Sheet. And this is something that can happen on a recurring basis. So if you want this to happen daily, that can certainly happen. If you want actions to be triggered, so when something falls below a certain level, reach out to a specific manufacturer, that's certainly also possible. In short, if your team has a manual repetitive spreadsheet process that you've considered increasing headcount to keep up with or outsourcing some of this to data or engineering teams for additional support, this is likely something that we can help your non-technical teams automate using Parabola, and certainly happy to provide some support to help you get there, certainly not by yourself. Hopefully this was a valuable video for starting to learn some of the fundamentals of Parabola, and definitely let me know if you have any questions. Appreciate it.